afternoon, everyone. Audible? Okay. So I'll begin with some conceptual issues regarding certification, and then we'll move forward to the next unit. And for the next 3 days, now we are going to have classes till 6 p.m. Only for the next 3 days. I'll give you a break also in between. So first, I'll discuss some conceptual issues regarding certification. What are those conceptual issues? Okay. Yesterday we covered social mobility. So I told you about certain case studies. One was on Goldthorpe. Okay, that is very important case study. One was glass. In fact, you can write down one more important case study. I also dealt with the Indian case study ISDS. Okay, that is the only thing that you have to remember from that survey ISDS. Okay, one more study you can note down, and then I'll proceed with the other section. Again, that is, this study is also very important one. Okay, and this is another study conducted by Goldthorpe himself. The first one that I told you was conducted in 1963 on affluent workers. The second study that was conducted by Goldthorpe is also known as Oxford Mobility Study. 1972. Oxford Mobility Study 1972. Now, what is this Oxford Mobility Study? Just like any other person, he also took a basically the study was conducted in Britain only. Okay. And he wanted to assess whether British is an open society or a closed society. Britain is a open society or a closed society. Okay. And for that, he conducted survey amongst 10,000 male members. Okay. So I'll write down the fact here. 10,000 males were researched. In England and Wales to test social mobility. Basically to test the degree of social mobility. Okay. And he divided these 10,000 members into three clusters. Three clusters. Okay. First cluster was that of service class. Which is the highly privileged group. Second cluster was that of intermediate class. And third cluster was that of working class. Okay. Which is the exact opposite of this one, the unprivileged. Okay. And what were the findings? First, he found high mobility, high absolute mobility with growth of service sector. Service sector, better pay and life chances. Okay. This was the time when software services, IT solution, all those things were proliferating like anything. Okay. And this was the growth of service sector, basically hospitality industry, all those things, which actually would give you better pay and better life chances. And he observed high absolute mobility amongst everyone. That means when IT sector was introduced, whether it is working class, whether it is intermediary class, whether it is service class, all of them had achieved upward absolute intragenerational mobility. अपने उस पोजीशन से पहले के कंपैरिजन में भी वो ऊपर थे, हर कोई ऊपर था सर्विस सेक्टर के आने के बाद से. वर्किंग क्लास इन सर्विस सेक्टर इज व्हाइट कॉलर एब्सोल्यूट मोबिलिटी, इंटरमीडिएट क्लास इन सर्विस सेक्टर एग्जीक्यूटिव, देन सर्विस क्लास और प्रिविलेज हो गया. ओके, so he observed first thing, high absolute mobility amongst everyone with the growth of service sector, better pay and life chances. Okay, what is the next thing that he observed? Second point, relative mobility remained unchanged. Why? Because those born higher up the social ladder had better chances of achieving higher class positions. Higher class positions. Basically, what he is trying to tell us is that at the end of the day, it is not only the absolute mobility that we have to see, we also have to see the chances of the few privileged people who were born higher up the social ladder, which would always outweigh the chances of those people who were not born to the higher ladder. एक आदमी है, there is one man, just think like this, he belongs to lower caste, second man belongs to higher caste. Now both of them have achieved absolute mobility. Okay, with independence everyone has now got an equal opportunity, but higher caste man would always have more chance to secure power, education, wealth than lower caste. Okay, so that way person who is born higher up the social ladder would always have better chances or for achieving higher class positions. This is what he was trying to tell us. Okay, so in conclusion, what you will write in the answer is that you would not be writing all these details in the answer. This is only for understanding. What you are going to write in the answer is this, the conclusion part. The odds weigh more in favor of those from higher classes, and therefore equality of opportunity not achieved. And he concluded that Britain is highly closed. This was his conclusion. Britain is highly closed. Highly closed. Okay. This is also called as Oxford Mobility Study. इंपॉर्टेंट है थोड़ी सी. इसको आप अगर आप लिखते हो ना तो आपका थोड़ा वेट बढ़ता है आंसर का. ओके. You just have to mention Goldthorpe name and you just have to mention Oxford Mobility Study. You may, it is not necessary to write year, okay, but this is something that you should definitely convey to the examiner, the main idea. Society may look open, but only few people reap the benefits who are already privileged ones. They are the ones who reap the benefits. Okay. Now, I will deal with some conceptual issues. Like equality, hierarchy, inequality. Very briefly, क्योंकि already हम पढ़ चुके हैं ये सब. Differences and stratification. These are conceptual issues. Okay. The question is, what is equality? Equality can be of multiple types. When Marx talks about a world which is classless, what he has in his mind is an equality. By equality, he simply meant economic equality. Okay. When Marx talks about communism, what he meant was economic equality. If there is no class, then everybody is equal, right? But if I were to theorize what he's trying to say academically, what he's actually trying to focus is not on equality of opportunity, he is focusing more on he is not focusing here, he is focusing on equality of outcome. See, there are two kinds of equality. एक तो equality क्या है? All the people who have crossed the age of 21 or who have attained the age of 21 and are below 32 can appear for UPSC exam. Equality. Equality at least for all those people who fall in the range of 21 to 32. Okay. And there would be no discrimination between those people. Everybody would be tested on one paper, objective standard, and the result would be completely meritocratic. Okay. Equality of opportunity to all those people falling between the range of 21 to 32. And then there is equality of outcome, which means all those people who have obeyed in UPSC will clear the exam. ऐसा थोड़ा ना होता है. But Marx is talking about this. Hey, there is a race. In a race, 10 people are competing. And if nobody is first, all are first, then why would anyone compete? जब रिजल्ट पहले ही पता है मैं फर्स्ट आऊंगा, मैं फिर पार्टिसिपेट भी क्यों करूंगी? आई मीन आई वुड नॉट हैव एनी मोटिवेशन टू स्टडी or to do exercise. And if everybody is going to be treated equally, I would not have any incentive to do any better in my life. जब मुझे पता है यार मैं तो इक्वल हूं ही, सब इक्वल इज्जत देंगे मेरे को, तो मैं बेटर ज्यादा करूं क्यों, मेहनत क्यों करूं, सोते रहूंगा अपना आराम से. Okay, so the problem is that since Marx has not elaborated a lot on communism, but people generally believe with the interpretation that they have done on the literature of Marx, this is what they believe, that Marx is largely focusing on equality of outcome, not opportunity. Opportunity was given to all the working class members, definitely. Outcome was not same. Few people amass wealth, surplus value they appropriate. Okay. When industrial revolution happened, opportunity was given to everyone. Okay. This is what we would think, that opportunity was given to everyone with the industrial revolution. Everybody could become an entrepreneur, could become millionaire, billionaire, but that does not happen. The aristocrats from the third estate were relatively better positioned to leverage industrial revolution. So you cannot say equality of opportunity was really there. Okay. But even if we assume as equality of opportunity was there, it would not translate into equality of outcome. Only few people will be rich, rest other will be poor. The meaning of rich, if I am rich, I can say I am rich only because I know what is poor. The meaning of rich would not be the same if there is no poor. अगर सब बराबर है तो rich कौन है? Poor भी कोई नहीं. The meaning of good, who is good, comes from many people who are bad. आप good हो ही नहीं सकते अगर bad आपको पता नहीं क्या होता है. So there has to be bad, there has to be someone who is bad, only then you are good. Otherwise good क्या होता है? Everyone is same. There is no meaning of God if there is no evil. God का meaning क्या रह जाएगा अगर evil नहीं होएगा? तो binary opposites तो हमें चाहिए. We live in this world and we think in terms of binaries always. Male and female. The meaning of male comes from female. You cannot be male if there is no female. You are deriving your identity from not being someone who you think is different from you. And therefore, that someone is equally important in shaping your identity. So, to say that you are equal to that would also be incorrect. So, our constitution, if you look into, our constitution gives this. Our constitution never promised this. Okay? Our constitution never promised equality of outcome. It will always promise equality of opportunity. And if you remember, since opportunity may be given equally to everyone, but the means to avail those opportunities may not be available with everyone. And this results into deviance. Merton clearly said this. Opportunity to reap that goal at the surface is equally available to everyone, but the means are not equally available. Therefore, this results into deviance. This is the reason for deviance. Okay. Now, so you know what is equality. Okay. Equality, when we say equality, equality could be anything: equality of wealth, equality of income, equality of prestige. Max Weber believed even if you have communism one day, still there would not be equality, because it is not only wealth, it is also equally about power and prestige. Okay. Tribal society hoti na, tribal society. Tribal society, according to Marx, would be communism. Okay, classless society, and therefore equal. But Max Weber would say, even in tribal society, there is a tribal chief, and therefore again there is inequality. There is one man who can wear the leopard skin, other cannot wear that leopard skin. Leopard skin is a symbol of chiefdom. Even in tribal society, some are more powerful than others, even if we assume that all are equal financially. Okay, so to have inequality is a utopia. And to have inequality is nothing. It's an ideology. Equality is a utopia. Kalman. Inequality is ideology. All of us have accepted inequality, even in democracy. तभी तो फेल होने के बाद भी चुप रहते हैं, या फिर गरीब होने के बाद भी चुप रहते हैं, चोर नहीं करते. ठीक है. All these underprivileged, if their exclusion is based on merit, all those students whose exclusion is based on merit, if there is a merit, there is inequality as well. But if that inequality is justified on the basis of merit, nobody would revolt. Therefore, we have accepted inequality as an ideology that would govern our lives. Utopia is therefore the equality. Understood? Okay. Now, hierarchy. What is hierarchy? If I place one man here, second here, then here, then here, then here, this is hierarchy. This is hierarchy. This could be upper class, this could be lower upper class, this could be middle class, this could be upper middle class, this could be lower middle class, this could be lower class working, something like this. This is hierarchy. Instead of upper class, if I write caste, again hierarchy, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. ये hierarchy है. Hierarchy means vertical arrangement. Simply, vertically arranged, ranked. And when you vertically arrange people, that means you assign rank. So hierarchy is nothing but a ranked pattern. Ranked, vertically ranked. Vertically ranked pattern. There cannot be a horizontal hierarchy. Both are opposite. हॉरिजॉन्टल में हायरार्की नहीं होता, वर्टिकल्स में हायरार्की है. ओके. When we read a state system, that was also hierarchy. First state, second state, third state. Karl Marx also believed there is a hierarchy which needs to be fixed. सिंपल. ये सारे जितने स्कॉलर्स हैं इनका एक ही आइडिया रहा है, वहीं से शुरू करते हैं, वहीं से आइडिया सारे कॉन्सेप्ट डेवलप हुए हैं. लिबर्टी इक्वालिटी का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है ये सब वहीं से आया है इंडिया में भी. नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन हायरार्की एंड इनइक्वालिटी. सवाल ये है हायरार्की एंड इनइक्वालिटी में डिफरेंस क्या है. See, hierarchy implies inequality. Hierarchy implies inequality. And inequality rests on hierarchical arrangement only. So both are synonymous to each other. Both. Hierarchy and inequality is nothing but synonyms. Hierarchy is one of the feature of bureaucracy. Okay. According to Max Weber, when I taught you features of bureaucracy, hierarchy was one of the feature. A chain of command flowing from top to bottom. That was nothing but hierarchy. But always remember one more thing. Hierarchy and inequality may be synonymous, but they are not always based on merit. Not always based on merit. There is one man, his name is Murphy. Murphy says that what happens that sometimes in the name of meritocracy, the exclusion bias like racism, sexism, classism is justified. In the name of meritocracy, the exclusion bias like racism, sexism, classism is justified. सीधा सा आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं मैं. अब हमने जिंदगी में कई बार ऐसा देखा होगा, मेरिट का सहारा लेकर लोग डिस्क्रिमिनेट करते हैं एक दूसरे को. Okay, suppose, see, just like I give you one example yesterday of IQ test. IQ test is portrayed as a completely objective test. Okay, but in the name of IQ test, what has happened, do you know? In the name of IQ test, the latent function of simply an IQ test, if you look into, you would realize that IQ test has justified supremacy of whites. IQ test has not only justified supremacy of white race, it has also justified hegemony of Europe over the world. How? IQ टेस्ट है वो टेस्ट जिसने पूरे वर्ल्ड को बताया यूरोप सबसे ऊपर है. सुनो यूरोप की. क्योंकि अकॉर्डिंग टू IQ टेस्ट एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन का सबसे ऊपर का IQ है और किसी का नहीं है. और एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन के बाद जो लोग आते हैं वो भी यूरोपियंस हैं, सब वाइट हैं. And you will see that this is how, in the name of merit, IQ test seems very objective. In the name of merit, what was justified? Racism. This is a latent function of IQ test. एल्बर्ट आइंस्टाइन का IQ टेस्ट हम सब सेलिब्रेट करते हैं, सबसे ऊपर का है, सबसे ऊपर का है, सबसे ऊपर का है. ओके. When we talk about state of matter, solid, liquid, gas, plasma, the fourth, and then we have Einstein, Bose, another one. Okay. So if you look into that Einstein-Bose state of matter that was discovered, originally it is believed, okay, now there are many interpretations to those things as well, that it was actually Bose who discovered it. But Einstein got more fame for that. And this is something that Robert Merton has also explained in his theory of comparative advantage. Since Einstein is European, was white, therefore he got more popularity for this discovery, unlike Bose. Okay. So, merit is there, but again, racism is practiced in the name of merit. Sexism is practiced in the name of merit. Classism is practiced in the name of merit. Casteism is also practiced in the name of merit. Okay. So, meritocracy does not mean that inequality will not be there. Meritocracy tells us inequality will be there, but inequality will be based on equal opportunities. And inequality is functional. Therefore, according to Davis and Moore, they told us inequality is functional because it is only through inequality that we are getting the best of the bestest talent. So it is functional because the bestest of the best positions are occupied by bestest of the best talent. And therefore, equality is functional. It is helping society to get the bestest of the best talent. Okay, so meritocracy does not mean inequality is not there. Inequality is there, but inequality is based on merit. But Murphy says sometimes in the name of meritocracy, these things are practiced. Okay. That way, in the name of meritocracy, hierarchies are reproduced. Hierarchies are reproduced. In the name of merit, the hierarchy based on ascriptive status is reproduced. Hierarchy would be there on the basis of achieved status. But in the name of merit, ascriptive status hierarchy is also reproduced. Because those who have the most privileged ascribed features get the achievement. ठीक है? Now, the question is, what is differences? Now is the most important thing that I'm going to tell you. Some people are different from one another. Okay. Man and woman are two different genders or two different sexes. ठीक है, but somehow in the popular consciousness man assumes hierarchy, man assumes the superiority over female in the popular consciousness, because we have certain prejudices in our mind. Okay, we have certain prejudices in our mind. So remember one more thing. Here I am going to introduce another scholar जो तुम्हें काफी काम आएगा आगे जाकर. His name is Dipankar Gupta. दीपांकर गुप्ता इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्कॉलर, जेएनयू के हैं ये, बहुत बड़े सोशियोलॉजिस्ट हैं इंडिया के इस टाइम. दीपांकर गुप्ता एक सिंपल सी बात बोल रहे हैं. ही इज सेइंग दैट what happens is that differences which cannot be quantified, unlike class difference which can be quantified, okay, and therefore put into hierarchy, these differences that cannot be quantified are also put into hierarchy. देखो, ये जो क्लास का जो इनइक्वालिटी है, जो क्लास का जो स्ट्रेटिफिकेशन है, ओके, क्लास बेस्ड स्ट्रेटिफिकेशन, इफ यू सी, that is based on objective criteria, objective and quantifiable criteria. कैसे? जैसे हम क्या बोलते हैं, अपर क्लास, मिडिल क्लास, लोअर क्लास. दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड क्वांटिफाइबल क्राइटेरिया. किसकी वेल्थ ज्यादा है वो ऊपर है, किसकी इनकम ज्यादा है वो ऊपर है, किसकी कम है वो नीचे है. तो द क्राइटेरिया वाज हाईली ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड क्वांटिफाइबल. ओके, बट when you look into other stratas of society, for example caste based, you would not find any objective or quantifiable criteria. There is no objective reasoning behind Brahmin being at the topmost structure. Okay, so there is no objective or quantifiable criteria. What happens is that a Brahmin and Kshatriya are only different from one another. You cannot say one is superior or one is inferior. Can you say that? You cannot say that. They are only different. Just like man and woman are only different. And you cannot create a relation of inequality between something which are only between the things which are only different from one another. I mean, see, apple and orange, both are fruits. दोनों ही fruit हैं. Can you say that apple is superior to orange? No. Similarly, man and woman both are gender only. So to say that man is superior to woman would be wrong. They are only different. Okay. But what happens in reality is that man assumes superiority in the popular consciousness. What happens in reality is that Brahmins assume superiority in the popular consciousness. हमारे दिमाग में ब्राह्मण ऊपर चले जाते हैं, हमारे दिमाग में मैन ऊपर चले जाते हैं. Hindu and Muslims both are two different religious groups. just like apple and orange. Both are fruits. Okay. But in the popular consciousness, what happens? In India specifically, I'm talking about. Okay. In India, you would see Hindus assume superiority over Muslims. ये होता है, ठीक है? That could be due to any other. That could be due to any factor. That could be called as institutional communalism, जो एक कॉन्सेप्ट है, आगे मैं कभी बताऊंगा आपको, क्योंकि उनके पास नंबर्स हैं, हिंदू के पास सोशल कैपिटल है सबसे बड़ा. ओके, तो इसलिए उनके पास सिंबॉलिक कैपिटल आ जाता है. That could be one reason, but that is not the only reason. There are other factors as well. Okay. So Dipankar Gupta is actually trying to tell us one thing only. Caste-based stratification, in this caste-based stratification, or even in religions, just let me write like this. When you talk about class, there is objective criteria, but when you talk about caste, religion, gender, language, there you would not find any objective criteria. Within caste, we have multiple castes. All are different from one another. Religions are also multiple. All are different from one another, therefore cannot be put into hierarchy. Therefore, there cannot be inequality. Gender are also different. There cannot be hierarchy. Languages are also multiple types. There cannot be hierarchy. Hindi and English are two different languages only, but somehow English assumes superiority over Hindi. जो इंग्लिश बोलता है हमें लगता है यार स्टेटस, हिंदी वाले को लगता है. तो मर्फी जो मैंने पिछला बंदा बताया था, मर्फी वुड से, देखो, like UPSC gives equal opportunity to everyone, whether you are Hindi medium or English medium, but what happens in the name of merit? English medium people are promoted as IAS officers, and that is done in the name of merit only. So what Murphy is actually trying to tell us is very important, that in the name of merit, many prejudices reproduce themselves. Okay. Now coming back to Dipankar Gupta, he says when these are only different from one another, then how can we put them into hierarchical relation? However, in the popular consciousness, they assume hierarchy. So write down one line. Gupta assumes that differences cannot assume hierarchical relation. Cannot assume hierarchical relation. However, in the popular consciousness, differences tend to assume hierarchy. Differences tend to assume hierarchy. Differences tend to assume hierarchy mainly due to power structures. मेनली ड्यू टू पावर स्ट्रक्चर्स। इसका मतलब क्या है? मेनली ड्यू टू पावर स्ट्रक्चर्स। इसका मतलब ये है कि मैन एंड वुमेन आर ओनली डिफरेंट, बट मैन अज्यूम्स हायरार्की or man assumes superiority over women because in the ruling class you would only see men. Ruling class historically and in the contemporary context you would see men as the rulers of nations. So in the power structure you see men, and therefore something that is only different from one another, in that relation also man assumes superiority. Secondly, English and Hindi language are only different from one another. But why English assumes superiority? Because English is the language of Western countries who have conquered the non-Western countries, who have colonized the non-Western countries, and who are ruling all over the world. And therefore English assumes superiority. Brahmin assumes superiority over the other castes. Why? Because Brahmins are the ruling class. They have appointed Kshatriya kings. They are the ones who have written texts, Arthashastra, Kautilya, Brahmin. They are the ones who have written the bureaucratic arrangements, how bureaucracy in India should be like. अर्थशास्त्र उसी के ऊपर है. Upper caste have always been the ruling class in India. Therefore, upper caste assume superiority. क्या कह रहे हो सर? BKVS is not quantifiable and objective. Right? It is not quantifiable. But still, BK and V, well, I mean B assumes superiority over KVS only because of the popular consciousness, only because of the power structures. Historically, it is the very caste system has been designed by Brahmins, so obviously वो तो ऊपर ही रहेंगे. caste system उन्होंने बनाया है. They are the architect of the caste system. तो वो सबसे ऊपर हैं इसीलिए. Otherwise, see, है तो different ही, but they assume superiority because of these things. Okay. Now, what is Dipankar Gupta trying to tell us? Very important thing now he will be telling us. Dipankar Gupta says that the class which is objective and quantifiable makes open strata. And the caste, gender, religion, which are not based on quantifiable or objective criteria, they make closed strata. Caste, gender, religion, they make closed strata. Or you can also write open system and closed system. ऐसे भी कर सकते हो ताकि आपको कंफ्यूजन ना हो ज्यादा. ओपन सिस्टम and closed system. Okay. I'll briefly talk about open and close as well. थोड़ा सा ये भी बताना है मुझे. ठीक है, इतना हमको अभी समझना है. ओपन सिस्टम इज बेस्ड ऑन ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड क्वांटिफाइबल क्राइटेरिया. क्लोज सिस्टम इज बेस्ड ऑन non-objective, subjective differences which assume hierarchy. ठीक है, अभी इतना समझो, बाकी मैं अभी एक टेबल बनाने वाला हूं इसके बाद, ठीक है। नाउ लेट मी कम टू स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन। What is stratification? You know, the idea of stratification as a concept is largely introduced by Sorokin. It is Sorokin who has developed academic details on stratification as a device. Okay, what is stratification? Stratification is nothing. Stratification is simply vertical arrangement of groups according to distribution of power, wealth, and income or status, prestige. Power, wealth, income, or prestige. That is what stratification is. Okay. But we also know this one thing for sure, that stratas are not necessarily vertical. Just like I told you few minutes back. पहले इसको लिख लो, मैं फिर बताता हूं आगे. Stratification is vertical arrangement of groups according to distribution of power, wealth, income, and prestige. Vertical word is important here. ठीक है, अब देखो, Dipankar Gupta one day read this definition. Okay. Dipankar Gupta said vertical arrangement is there. Distribution of power, wealth, income, prestige is there. But when I read this definition ना, somehow ऐसा लगता है मुझे कि ये तो सिर्फ class based stratification की बात है. This is limited only to class based. See, the problem is that we know that yes, caste is also vertical, but we also know that even one caste like Brahmin has multiple castes within it. By Brahmin is not one caste. Brahmin एक वर्ण है जिसके अंदर बहुत कास्ट्स हैं और सब पंडित हैं, पर सबके नाम अलग हैं. भाई मिश्रा है, पांडे है, वर्मा है, शर्मा है, त्रिवेदी है, चतुर्वेदी है, द्विवेदी है. ये सारे के सारे लिंगायत है, होका लिंगास है. ये सारे के सारे ब्राह्मण्स हैं, सब के सब. ओके, एंड इवन विद इन देम यू वुड फाइंड हायरार्की. आप यूपी में जाओ, यूपी में जाओ आप, नो, ब्राह्मण्स भी अपने आप में कोई एक होमोजीनियस ग्रुप नहीं है. ये भी इनमें आपस में भी कुछ मानते कि हम ऊपर हैं, वो हमसे नीचे वाले हैं. और वो नीचे जो बोल रहे हैं कि वो नीचे हमसे, उनसे आप पूछोगे वो बोलेंगे ये हमसे नीचे. तो ऑब्जेक्टिव क्राइटेरिया कुछ है नहीं, अपनी मन की बात है ये. ठीक है, तो यू कैन नॉट से कि caste is necessarily vertical? Varna may be vertical, but caste is not necessarily vertical. There are multiple castes in the horizontal layer. Within Brahmin, there are multiple castes who are horizontally placed, who claim vertical relation with each other but are horizontally placed. Okay. Within Kshatriya also, you would find multiple Kshatriyas. Okay, who are horizontal. All the prince, you would see all the princes, whether it is a princely family from Madhya Pradesh or princely family from Rajasthan or from Gujarat, all of them you would find belong to one Varna. But each of them would claim superiority to another one. They would say that ours lineage or descent or caste is superior to them. And all of them would say the same. But they are only different from one another. Okay. So, what Dipankar Gupta is trying to tell us is, दीपांकर गुप्ता ने क्या किया, पहले तो उसको लिखो. दीपांकर गुप्ता critiqued Sorokin and modified the definition of social stratification to include social differences social differences that cannot be objectively measured, but assume inequality. वो तो पता नहीं दिख रहा होगा कि नहीं है. To include social differences that cannot be objectively measured but assume inequality. To include social differences that cannot be objectively measured but assume inequality. तब अल्टीमेटली अब देखो हमें करना क्या है. अब हमें जो याद रखना है मैं वो तुम्हें बताता हूं. ये तो सब वैसे याद रखना ही है क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं काम आ जाएगा, तुम्हें खुद भी नहीं पता चलेगा कहाँ काम आएगी ये चीजें. ऑल डिपेंड्स ऑन द काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चंस. ओके, बट स्टिल जो एक एसेंस है दीपांकर गुप्ता का वो सिंपली इतना ही है कि दीपांकर गुप्ता हमें बोलते हैं if I am concerned only with the study of differences, ये दीपांकर गुप्ता बोल रहा है. If I am concerned only with the study of differences only, then what I would be studying is nothing but social differentiation. If I am concerned with hierarchy, then what I would be studying would be nothing but social inequality. But since I am concerned with both of them, hierarchy and differences, and how differences assume hierarchy, therefore I would not study either social differentiation or inequality. I would rather study social stratification. and therefore social stratification is a larger umbrella that includes hierarchy and differences both, and how differences assume hierarchy, therefore inequality. समझे कि नहीं समझे? ठीक है? So this was all about conceptual issues. Now, just last topic, and I will wrap this. सर्टिफिकेशन, सर्टिफिकेशन एक्चुअली इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है, इसलिए मैं इतना टाइम दे रहा हूँ, ठीक है? और मुझे पता है कि तुम्हारे बस की नहीं होगी उसको पढ़ना ये सब अकेले, ठीक है? सीधी सी बात है, नहीं होगी बस की, इसलिए मैं खुद ही बता रहा हूँ। कुछ चीजें हैं जो तुम्हारे बस की होंगी, जिसपे मैं फिर भी कम इंपॉर्टेंस दूँ, चल जाएगा, ठीक है? बट ये इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है। नाउ आई विल टॉक अबाउट टू सिस्टम्स, जो अगर हम अपना सिलेबस देखें सर्टिफिकेशन का, तो मुझे सिलेबस में इन सर्टिफिकेशन इन मोबिलिटी, इन डी पार्ट social mobility, the first part is open and closed system. Open and closed systems. मैं जरा इनकी बात करने जा रहा हूं अब, ओपन एंड क्लोज सिस्टम्स की, ओके, जो कि आपके पूरे डिबेट को सम अप कर देगा। ओपन सिस्टम, क्लोज्ड सिस्टम। ओपन सिस्टम एंड क्लोज सिस्टम। ओके, नाउ ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंस है, इसको आपको याद रखना है हमेशा, ओके? Whenever you get any sort of confusion, just turn to this page, open and close system. सारी कंफ्यूजन आपकी खत्म हो जाएगी। ओपन सिस्टम किसे बोलते हैं, ये तो हमें मालूम है। देखो, जनरली हम ऐसे करते हैं, क्लास इज ओपन एंड कास्ट इज क्लोज्ड, राइट? बट हमने ये भी देखा, क्लास इज नॉट एब्सोल्युटली ओपन, और हमें ये भी मालूम है कास्ट इज ऑल्सो नॉट एब्सोल्युटली क्लोज्ड। तो इसका मतलब क्या है? ये सिर्फ क्या है? ये एक आइडियल टाइप है, ये एक मॉडल है, ठीक है, जो मैं बनाऊंगा। अब इस मॉडल में कुछ एलिमेंट्स डालने वाले हैं हम, ठीक है? सो फर्स्ट एलिमेंट इज ओपन सिस्टम को हम डिफाइन करेंगे, अ सिस्टम in which hierarchy is quantifiable and legitimized on meritocratic grounds. System in which hierarchy is quantifiable and legitimized on meritocratic grounds, that is open system. Okay, now closed system. System in which differences based on race, caste, state, gender are hierarchized without objective criteria. That is closed. System in which differences based on race, caste, state are hierarchized without objective criteria कुछ है ही नहीं. ठीक है. Now you tell me. अब हम क्या करेंगे, एक एग्जाम्पल इसका यहां पे रख देंगे कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल क्लास. यहां का एग्जाम्पल हमें मालूम है रेस, कास्ट, स्टेट. ठीक है, ये सिर्फ मॉडल एग्जाम्पल्स हैं. नाउ सी, is merit, is mobility allowed in open system? Can we have mobility in open system? Yes. And how do we have mobility? Based on merit. So merit allows mobility. ठीक है, merit allows mobility. And यहां के ये जो है mobility in this closed system would never be encouraged. Mobility would always be discouraged. If lower caste tries to become upper caste ना, फिर upper caste तुम देखो करती क्या है. ठीक है, जब एक नीचे का दल, ठीक है, चाहे जो भी हो, जब वो ऊपर जाने की कोशिश करता है, ऊपर से रेजिस्टेंस होता है हमेशा. When blacks tried to achieve mobility, they tried to gain power, wealth, there was always a resistance from whites, although society declared them itself to be open and democratic now. But white would never want blacks to overthrow them in power. Okay. So here you cannot see mobility of caste, at least in terms of merit. On the basis of merit, a Shudra cannot become Brahmin. मेरिट नहीं अलाउ करता है, क्योंकि ये डिफरेंसेस कभी मेरिट पे बने भी नहीं थे. ठीक है, तो हियर मोबिलिटी इज डिस्करेज्ड. मोबिलिटी किसकी? मोबिलिटी ऑफ लोअर वंस इज डिस्करेज्ड बाय अपर वंस. Okay, whether it is man discouraging women's education, क्या करना है इनको पढ़ा लिखा के. Okay, so this is one thing that we see. Now these are only, remember, this is ideal type, this is ideal type, is this real? Maybe, may not be. ये तो अभी हमें पता चलेगा जब हम बात करेंगे रियल सिचुएशंस की. बट दिस इज आवर मॉडल. ओके, नाउ थर्ड पॉइंट, in open system mobility is acceptable. Mobility is acceptable, and here, as we have clearly written down, mobility is discouraged, not acceptable. Not acceptable. Okay, in a closed system, like for example in a state, if I talk about a state system, women's mobility was not acceptable to the men for a very long time. The mobility of blacks were not acceptable to the white for a very long time. Okay, so mobility is discouraged. Now, next point. In open system, upward mobility would not displace the upwardly situated member. In open system, upward mobility would not displace the upwardly situated member. It would not displace the upwardly situated member. What does it mean? भाई सीधी सी बात है, तुम आईएएस बनोगे किसी की कॉस्ट पे थोड़ा ना बनोगे, ऊपर चलता रहेगा सिस्टम, तुम अंदर आओगे, जो तुमसे पहले का था वो ऊपर जाएगा, तुम उसकी जगह आ जाओगे. You would occupy a position, that is the entry position. The person who was there before you, he would occupy a position that is higher, and therefore in the open system, upward mobility does not displace, it does not displace you, in the sense, if I become SDM, it is not that the SDM who was there before me, he would be displaced. ऐसा नहीं होता है, rather he would get higher rank now, प्रमोशन हो जाएगा. ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई ठीक देखो, एक पोजीशन है, दो कंटेंडर है, ठीक है, एक पोजीशन है, दो कंटेंडर है, एक ने पोजीशन हासिल कर ली, पर जो उस पोजीशन पे था ऑलरेडी, उसकी पोजीशन लूज नहीं हुई. इफ यू बिकम आईएएस, the people who are already IAS, they are not going to lose their status. They will always be there. In the open system, it happens. Okay, it's very simple. But in the closed system, if you achieve mobility, if you have upward mobility, it would always necessarily displace someone. In the sense, if Shudra become Brahmins, Brahmins would not be Brahmins. They would lose their status. Okay. But if you become IAS, someone who is already IAS, he is not going to lose his status. He would welcome you, aao, tum bhi aao. If women gets power gradually, and if this becomes reality for a very long time, men would lose their power over women. Okay, so write down here. In the closed system, the upward mobility को हाँ ऊपर लिखता हूं, the upward mobility would always displace the superior position. of some other group. ठीक है. Whenever any lower word or any lower caste person would try to assume hierarchy, would try to assume superiority, and would try to claim higher status, what would happen? The people who already have higher status, they would lose it. And this, therefore, there is one scholar, he says that status hierarchies are zero sum game. Zero sum game. His name is Murray Milner. Murray Milner. Status hierarchies are zero sum game. ठीक है. Now just two more differences. Now here, when upward mobility takes place in the open system, the movements take place with relative ease. Okay, relative ease. Unlike that closed system where movement does not take place with relative ease. Okay, as I just told you that status hierarchies are zero sum game. If you assume that status, other would be displaced, and therefore this would create conflict between the two people. It will always create conflict between the two people. See, just think like this. To give you one example, contemporary. Today, many people are trying to achieve OBC status. ठीक है, सबको चाहिए OBC, और ये भी फैक्ट है कि सबको नहीं मिलेगा. 50% सीलिंग है. You cannot cross that ceiling. 50%. And therefore, if you try to become OBC, you would always see resistance also from those people who are already OBC. They would not want you. Because if you become OBC, that would be coming at the cost of that person who had already attained OBC status before you. Understanding or not? This does not happen in class. If I am upper class, you are middle class. If you become upper class, मुझे क्या problem है? आओ भाई, बनाओ पैसा तुम भी. But in caste system does not happen. कोई ना कोई दिक्कत रहेगी. That is why you would have agitation, protest. Always you would have protest against these things. It would not be easy to become OBC or any other caste. You could not easily get the caste status, okay, because the people who already have that status would resist. Now next, this open system draws sustenance from quantitative hierarchy. And this draws sustenance sustenance from qualitative differences. ठीक है. So this was all about open and closed system. Now we know neither it is absolutely closed, neither this is absolutely open. This is not absolutely open is something that I told you through 3 case studies. Glass को याद रखना है, Goldthorpe को याद रखना है, affluent workers and Oxford. Why this is not absolutely closed is something that I will now tell you. Why caste is not absolutely closed. And also remember one more thing. In the open and closed system, you can write down one more point. In the open system, na, the mobility is that of one individual. Mobility is of one individual in open system. Mobility is that of individual. But in the closed system, mobility is that of group. Group mobility. Okay? Not individual. इसका मतलब क्या है? ओबीसी बनेंगे तो एक दो नहीं, वो पूरा स्टेटस सबको मिलेगा, सब लोग ओबीसी आएंगे. एक आदमी को ओबीसी नहीं मिलता है, एक कम्युनिटीज को मिलता है ओबीसी. लेकिन मेरिट एक आदमी की होती है. मेरिट के बेसिस पे मोबिलिटी यू अचीव इंडिविजुअली. यू क्लियर द एग्जाम, यू बिकम आईएएस. इसमें ग्रुप थोड़ा ना मोबिलिटी हुई है, इंडिविजुअल की मोबिलिटी है. बट इन दोस स्ट्रेटा it is always group mobility. You would always see group coming out in resistance to the dominant group. You would see women's movement. When it comes to gender as a strata that is closed, you would see women mobilizing themselves against men. ऐसा नहीं कि एक women आई. And only because of this women's mobility, you would see certain changes in laws. ओके, फिर कमीशंस बैठेंगी, लॉज बनेंगे, वुमेन को रिजर्वेशन मिलेगा. तो ऑल दिस हैपेंड बिकॉज ऑफ मोबिलिटी, बिकॉज ऑफ मूवमेंट्स. इन द क्लोज सिस्टम वी सी मूवमेंट्स, वुमेन्स मूवमेंट, फेमिनिज्म. फॉर ब्लैक के केस में ब्लैक मूवमेंट, दलित मूवमेंट. बट इन क्लास ओपन सिस्टम you do not see movement. If I want to become IAS, I would not start movement. Simple है, एग्जाम दो, निकल गए. Understood? Okay. And movement is a symbol, clear cut symbol that mobility is not so easy. That is why we had to go for a movement. Mobility is resisted. That is why we have movement. Men resist mobility of women. That is why women had to have a movement called as feminism. White resists the movement of black upward mobility. That is why black had to go for black movement. Civil rights movement happened in United States. Civil rights movement. That was completely for the amelioration of blacks. Dalit movement happened in India. Dalit Panther movement. Neo-Dalit movement. Republican Party of India was formed. Because upper caste resist lower caste. Self-respect movement was held in South India. due to same reason. So this is something that happens more in closed system. Okay, so you would have more and more movements in closed societies, less and less movement in open society. ओपन सोसाइटीज मूवमेंट की जरूरत नहीं होती, वहां मेरिट है, वहां मेरिट है। तो आपको अमेरिका में आपको मूवमेंट इतनी दिखेगी नहीं कभी। कितनी बार आपको अमेरिका दिखेगा स्ट्राइक या पत्थर मारते हुए लोग ऐसे आ रहे हैं, कितनी बार? कभी साल में एक बार हो गया, कभी 10 साल में एक बार कुछ हो गया ऐसा। तो इंडिया में आपको मालूम ही हर 2 महीने बाद एक मूवमेंट होती। शाहीन बाग हुआ लास्ट ईयर, ठीक है, दैट वाज अनदर मूवमेंट। बिकॉज समहाउ the Hindu nationalist restricted Muslims to assume that citizenship of India. This was nothing but exclusionary social closure, opportunity hoarding, and manifestation of closed system. Understood or not? ठीक। अब why caste is not absolutely closed? एक आदमी है, his name was सिद्धार्थ गौतम। सिद्धार्थ गौतम one day became Lord Buddha। ठीक है, वो सिद्धार्थ गौतम जो थे वो क्षत्रिय थे, बुद्धा बन गए, इनलाइटेंड हो गए। This was nothing but mobility in caste. He was Kshatriya. After becoming Buddha, the enlightened, he had attained Brahmanical status. भाई सिद्धार्थ गौतम एक लड़का था सिर्फ, ये आदमी लॉर्ड बुद्धा बन गया। यानी ये क्षत्रिय से ब्राह्मणिकल स्टेटस अचीव कर गया। ये मोबिलिटी नहीं है क्या? मोबिलिटी। वाल्मीकि एक आदमी था, वाल्मीकि, ऐसी उसने एक किताब लिख दी, तो इंडिया का फर्स्ट एपिक पोएम बोल दिया बाद में, तो रामायण कहते हैं आज की डेट में। उसने रामायण जब लिखी, लिखने के बाद उसका नाम हो गया महर्षि वाल्मीकि। पहले वो वाल्मीकि था। वाल्मीकि इज लोअर कास्ट, वाल्मीकि इज अ दलित कास्ट टुडे। अगर आज की हम बात करें, वाल्मीकि जो होते हैं वो दलित्स होते हैं, बट महर्षि वाल्मीकि कौन होते हैं? ये ब्राह्मण्स हैं, ब्राह्मण। सो देयरफॉर you can see caste is open to few people, and these few are the charismatic people. इनके लिए कास्ट हमेशा ओपन रहेगा। The Guru Nanak was also Hindu। नानक नाम तो नानक था, ठीक है, he was also Hindu, but he also achieved enlightenment and became Guru Nanak, and turned out to be one of the first Sikh guru, the founder of Sikhism. Basically, he is not the founder of Sikhism, but he is the first guru. Sikhism as a religion के फाउंडर वो नहीं है, बट वो गुरु जरूर हैं, जिनकी मार्गदृष्टि में सिखिज्म एज अ रिलीजन एस्टेब्लिश हुआ। And he also became, he had also achieved Brahmanical status, the so-called enlightened status, which was exclusive to Brahmins. But we can see these examples. These are the examples according to Louis Dumeau. If you remember, I told you in the closed system में मैंने क्या बोला? There is no individual mobility. I told you ना, बोला था ग्रुप मोबिलिटी होती है, but these are some exceptions. which show that even in closed system you can have individual mobility. And these are examples of sannyasis, gurus, sadhus. These are exceptions. And this exception was pointed out by Louis Dumoux. इसकी बात मैं करूंगा पेपर 2 में. एक आदमी है लुई डुमो. ये बोलता है कास्ट इज क्लोज्ड. खुद बोलता है कास्ट इज क्लोज्ड. एंड ही कॉल्ड इंडिया एज hierarchical society, homo hierarchicus. Okay. But he also pointed out one exception, that yes, few people can become Brahmins or achieve Brahminical status even if they are not belonging to Brahmin family. Okay. Anyhow, secondly, as I told you, other than these individuals, एक तो individuals के level पे होता है. Secondly, I told you about marriage. अब बात दो individuals की है. दो individual मिल गए. One is that of upper caste. One is upper caste girl, Brahmin girl. Second is lower caste boy. Okay, who she got married to. These two will be outcasted. That means mobility is there. चाहे डाउनवर्ड है, वर्टिकल है, बट है तो है. ठीक है. तो कास्ट इज नॉट एब्सोल्युटली क्लोज्ड. अगर आप नीचे जा रहे हो तो ये दिखा रहा है कि क्लोज नहीं है, ओपन है. अभी तो नीचे गए, नीचे जाना भी ओपननेस दिखा रहा है. ठीक है. सो when you have such marriage between upper caste girl, upper caste woman and lower caste man, you are outcasted. And outcasted का मीनिंग क्या हुआ? नीचे चले गए आप, नीचे आपको नीचे धकेल दिया. नीचे धकेल देने का मतलब है क्लोज तो नहीं है, ओपन ही है. आउटकास्ट हो गए. जो बच्चा पैदा होएगा वो भी चंडाल होएगा, वो नीचे की कास्ट का होएगा. ना वो इसकी कास्ट का होएगा, ना वो इसकी कास्ट का, वो कुछ अलग ही होएगा, यानी और का नीचे, यानी क्लोज तो नहीं है, ओपन है. सीधी सी बात है. थर्ड, वेस्टर्नाइजेशन. There was a point of time when we had, as I told you, cumulative inequality. Your occupation was defined by your caste. That means your class was coming from your caste. ठीक है भाई. Before independence this was happening for a very long time. Your class was coming from your caste. But today your class is not coming from your caste. Caste is not defining your occupation anymore. What does it mean? Caste has become open. ये भी तो शो करता है caste has become open. It is not defining your occupation anymore. Open हो गया है वो. पहले बहुत ज्यादा close था, but अब relatively it has become open. So first we had cumulative inequality. In the language of Andre Bete, that means caste and class were conjoined together. They were twins. Caste and class were twins. Today caste and class are not twins. Okay. Today we have dispersed inequality. Inequality तो है, inequality है, but ऐसी नहीं है. क्लास बेस ज्यादा है, कास्ट बेस भी है, लेकिन इनका आपस में लिंक नहीं है. ठीक है. क्लास बेस इनइक्वालिटी आज की डेट में कास्ट की वजह से नहीं है. उस टाइम वी हैड क्लास बेस इनइक्वालिटी बिकॉज ऑफ कास्ट इनइक्वालिटी, बिकॉज कास्ट वाज क्लास. टुडे caste is not class. Class is coming from your individual merit, not from your caste. That does not mean inequality is not there. Inequality is still there. in class. But that would be dispersed in the sense there is no link between caste and class. Dispersed. Inequality. Caste dislinked from class. Delinked from class. And when class is delinked from class, when caste is delinked from class, that means caste has become open. That means caste has become open. Simple. Fourth example. Reservation. Think about people who were general, became OBC in 93. Who we call as other backward classes, but are caste only. OBC status is given on the basis of caste only. उस कास्ट के लोग को ओबीसी मिलता है अगर उनके पास वो चीजें नहीं है. ठीक है, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि नॉन कास्ट क्राइटेरिया इज नॉट इंपॉर्टेंट, इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट, बट देन कास्ट ऑटोमेटिकली बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट देयर. ओके, so think of people who have gained mobility only because of their caste. That shows caste is open. Caste, if caste can restrict you from gaining power, it is caste only that can help you to get the same. क्या बात है. कास्ट ने ही लोअर कास्ट को पीछे रखा. आज वो ऊपर जा रहे हैं तो वो भी सिर्फ अपनी कास्ट की वजह से ही. तो कास्ट अगर क्लोज है तो कास्ट ओपन भी है. क्लोज वो तब था, आज वो ओपन हो गया इस मामले में कि अब वो आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी दे रहा है. अगर आपके पास वो कास्ट है आपको वो रिजर्वेशन मिल जाएगा. तो कास्ट अगर एक लिफ्ट का दरवाजा था जो बंद है, खुलता ही नहीं, तो आज वो एक स्प्रिंग बोर्ड है, उस पर छलांग मारो तो ऊपर चल जाओगे. कास्ट इज टुडे यूज्ड एज अ स्प्रिंग बोर्ड. You can jump on it and achieve mobility. You can take advantage of your caste to achieve mobility. And when I talk about reservation, all those people who are now fighting to claim OBC status, or all those people who have gotten benefits out of their reservation that was given to them because of their caste. These are two examples which clearly show mobility in the caste and caste not being completely closed. If caste was closed, it is caste only that has given you opportunity. हाँ, वो reservation है जो भी है. So reservation is nothing but affirmative action. This affirmative action by the state. Consider state like a key, caste being lock. State has opened this lock. Okay, and the people who were in this lock, who were behind the doors of this lock, have now gotten opportunities. But only people from this door, not from the other one. So it is caste only which has given them privilege. So therefore it is open. And then Sanskritization. 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 Sanskritization is nothing but how lower caste emulate cultural practices of upper castes. दे बिकम ब्राह्मण्स। इसको लिखना मत अभी, ये सिर्फ इतना ही समझो, क्योंकि संस्कृताइजेशन में भी डिटेल में बताने का मतलब नहीं है। सिर्फ इतना ही समझो कि ओपननेस कैसे कैसे आ रही है। लोअर कास्ट एमुलेट द प्रैक्टिसेस ऑफ अपर कास्ट, और ट्राइब एमुलेटिंग प्रैक्टिसेस ऑफ कास्ट, and therefore tribe becoming part of Hindu fold, because caste is part of Hindu system. And when tribes try to become like caste, then tribe becomes caste tribe. But that is also mobility. विदाउट डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा, नहीं तो कंफ्यूजन हो जाएगा तुम लोगों को, ठीक है। ट्राइब दैट इज कुर्ग, when it tried to become Brahmin, Kurg tribe, then it became not Brahmin, it became Kurg Brahmin. That means tribal Brahmin. मोबिलिटी तो हुई, कंप्लीट नहीं हुई। They could not become Brahmin, they became Kurg Brahmin. पर मोबिलिटी है, एब्सोल्युटली ओपन नहीं है, बट ओपन तो हुआ, ठीक है। उसके आगे क्या हुआ, ब्राह्मण्स ने क्या किया, वो मैं बाद में बताऊंगा जब पेपर 2 शुरू करूंगा, ठीक है। Similarly, if we have Sanskritization, we also have desanskritization. Desanskritization. Sanskritization is when lower caste people try to emulate upper caste, and desanskritization is when upper caste try to become lower. When upper caste people try to become lower, और ये बहुत होता है इंडिया में। तुम देखो ओबीसी के लोग, ओबीसी के जो सबसे फर्जी, अगर कोई रिजर्वेशन है ना, ठीक है, बुरा मानने की बात नहीं है, तो वो ओबीसी है, सबसे फर्जी, क्योंकि ये कंप्लीटली पॉलिटिकल है, इसमें कोई ऑब्जेक्टिव क्राइटेरिया नहीं है। ये वोट बैंक की पॉलिटिक्स का शिकार है ये ग्रुप ओबीसी, ठीक है। एंड ओबीसी सर्टिफिकेट जो मिलते हैं बेसिकली, नो, आपको पता चलेगा कि वो सब जनरल वाले लोग ही हैं। ऐसा थोड़ा ना कि सब ओबीसी पैदा होते हैं, पैदा सब जनरल ही हुए हैं, स्टेटस उनको फिर मिलता है सर्टिफिकेट के हिसाब से, ठीक है। फिर वो ओबीसी बनते हैं व्हेन दे रियलाइज दैट फायदा है, दे बिकम ओबीसी when they realize that there is advantage. You know, not every general category student has taken advantage of these statuses. Okay, some prefer to have that certificate, some prefer not to have that certificate. And think of people who have tried to become SCs. What I told you yesterday, there is a professor in University of Rajasthan who has talked about a concept called as Shudrais. Think of all those people also, na, Jats, Gujars, who are dominant caste, Kshatriya, but they want reservation. That is also nothing but desanskritization. They want to have that status so that they could enjoy those same power, same privilege which they once had and they have now lost to the lower caste. And that is why they would want to claim that status once again. So they would not look at reservation as something that is given to marginalized people. No, that is not for us. They would rather look at reservation as a tool to bring back the same glory that they once had. The way they look at reservation, this is a symbolic interactionist perspective. The way I am looking at reservation would be very different from the way you would look at reservation. They look at reservation not as uh, you know, not as something given to lower caste people. They look at reservation as a tool to politically empower themselves over those lower caste who have superseded them. तरीका ही अलग है देखने का रिजर्वेशन की. अंडरस्टूड. और ये मराठा के साथ यही हुआ महाराष्ट्र में. इन महाराष्ट्र मराठा कम्युनिटी, इसका तो अलग पॉलिटिक्स है, बहुत डीप है ये इन चीजों में जाना अभी. बट आपको मैं एक जनरल आइडिया बता दूं तो मराठा कम्युनिटी, मराठा इज अ कास्ट. ओके, व्हाट वी कॉल एज मराठा, लिखते हम मराठा है, ठीक है. मराठा इज अ कम्युनिटी कास्ट which was a dominant caste in महाराष्ट्र. ठीक है, वो डोमिनेंट कास्ट में आता है महाराष्ट्र. जैसे रेड्डी आते हैं आंध्र के, पटेल आते हैं गुजरात के, वैसे ही मराठा एक कम्युनिटी है का जो कि डोमिनेंट थी. लेकिन जब पता चला कि SC ST OBC इन सबको सारे बेनिफिट्स जा रहे हैं एजुकेशन में, पावर में, फिर इनको चाहिए था रिजर्वेशन, हमें भी चाहिए. तो reservation to them meaning to them would be different but and would be same. ओके, ये तो आपको अब समझ आ गया होगा कि मैं क्यों बता रहा हूं कि कास्ट ओपन है. देन देयर आर मेनी अदर कॉन्सेप्ट लाइक क्षत्रियाइजेशन, राजपुताइजेशन, ठीक है, जो हमें बताता है कि कास्ट एब्सोल्युटली वो क्लोज नहीं होता है. ठीक है, तो ये आपको चीजें ध्यान रखनी है. तो आई होप इसमें अब कोई कंफ्यूजन नहीं रहेगा. So the next topic that we are going to start today is social change. Social change. ब्रेक, हाँ चलो ब्रेक ले लेता हूँ 5 मिनट. बहुत सिंपल है ये टॉपिक. सोशल चेंज. ओके, फर्स्ट part of this unit is sociological theories of social change. Sociological theories of social change. See, in stratification, race is not so important, you can skip it. Okay, ethnicity is something that is there in paper 2, तो इसलिए वो मैंने अभी नहीं पढ़ाया. बाकी जो भी कॉन्सेप्ट है वो सब पेपर 2 में आएंगे जो बच गए हैं. ओके, पॉवर्टी एंड डेप्रिवेशन इज अगेन समथिंग दैट पेपर 2 में आएगा फिर से. बाकी आई थिंक कुछ बचा नहीं है, बाकी एवरीथिंग इज कवर्ड. ओके, नाउ सोशियोलॉजिकल थ्योरीज ऑफ सोशल चेंज. इसमें हम कुछ भी नहीं करते, वी डील विद different theories like evolutionary theory, then functionalist theory, then conflict theory, then cyclical theory, and then we also deal with another theory that is modernization theory. 5 theories in total. And then some critique to modernization theory also. Okay. First we deal with evolutionary theory फटाफट से. कुछ भी नहीं है. ऑगस्ट कॉम्ट. क्या बोला उसने? पहले क्या था? थियोलॉजिकल था, फिर मेटाफिजिकल आ गया, एंड देन उसके बाद साइंटिफिक सोसाइटी. खत्म. देन जेम्स फ्रेजर. पहले मैजिक था, फिर रिलीजन, फिर साइंस. खत्म. फिर ईबी टाइलर. पहले एनिमिज्म था, पॉलीथिज्म, फिर मोनोथिज्म. खत्म. ठीक है. फिर स्पेंसर. स्पेंसर भी एवोल्यूशनिस्ट है, डार्विन का फॉलोअर है. स्पेंसर ने क्या बताया एवोल्यूशन में? स्पेंसर ने क्या बोला एवोल्यूशन? जैसे कि स्पीशीज का एवोल्यूशन होता है, जस्ट लाइक वी हैव एवोल्यूशन ऑफ स्पीशीज, सिमिलरली वी हैव एवोल्यूशन ऑफ सोसाइटीज. डार्विन डिड नॉट टॉक अबाउट एवोल्यूशन ऑफ सोसाइटी. स्पेंसर टॉक्ड अबाउट एवोल्यूशन ऑफ सोसाइटी ऑन डार्विनियन प्रिंसिपल्स. दैट इज व्हाई स्पेंसर को बोलते हैं सोशल डार्विनिस्ट. वो डार्विनिस्ट है बट वो सोशल डार्विनिस्ट है. ओके. And Spencer talks about evolution like this: simple society, then doubly compound, and then trebly compound. ठीक है. What are these? में क्या होता है? हमको इतना पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है, इन सब में जाने की जरूरत नहीं, बट स्टिल आई टेल यू. सिंपल सोसाइटी सिंपली मीन्स different families forming a clan. In simple society, multiple families form one clan. Family 1, 2, 3 form a clan. What is clan? Clan देखो क्या होता है कि imaginary system. Imaginary system in which the members claim their descent to something that is imaginary. मैं नागवंशी हूं. नागवंशी मतलब नाग से निकले. हमारे जो वंश है वो नाग से है. नाग से आए हैं. नाग से इंसान कब से आने लग गए? आ गए, वो आ गए बस. ऐसी हवा में, हाँ हवा में, इसलिए इमेजिनेशन है. चंद्रवंशी हैं हम, चंद्रवंशी. चांद से आदमी निकलते हैं. सूर्यवंशी हूं मैं. क्या बकवास बातें यार ये सब. ये क्लैन होता है. गोत्र, ये जो हिंदू फॉलो करते हैं, गोत्र. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज गोत्र? व्हाट इज गोत्र? कैन समवन टेल मी? हकीकत तुमको नहीं पता होगा. गोत्र क्या होता है? पीपल शेयरिंग सेम काउ पेन, नहीं नहीं वो तो ठीक है, होता क्या है? हाँ बिल्कुल सही महेश। देखो, इन हिंदू फिलोसफी देर इज अ थिंग कॉल्ड सप्त ऋषि। सप्त ऋषि, 7 ऋषिज, ओके, इन हिंदू फिलोसफी 7 ऋषिज। वी क्लेम आर लीनिएज। जब हम फैमिली चार्ट बनाते हैं ना, मेरे बाप का बाप का बाप का बाप का दादा, पता नहीं कौन कहाँ कहाँ, पता चलता है आखिर में एक ऋषि थे, ऋषि, वहां से हम आए हैं। 7 ऋषिज का कॉन्सेप्शन है हिंदू फिलोसफी में, उनमें से एक ऋषि भारद्वाज वाज द नेम ऑफ ऋषि। फिर हम नाम लगाते हैं, कुछ लोग के नाम के आगे लिखा होता है भरद्वाज। ठीक है, भरद्वाज क्या कास्ट है? कुछ लोग बोल देंगे कास्ट है वो, ठीक है। कुछ लोग बोलेंगे गोत्र है हमारा, कास्ट हमारा कुछ और बोलेंगे वो। ये इंडिया में थोड़ी दिक्कत रहेगी। आपके नाम के आगे जो लिखा है वो जरूरी नहीं वो कास्ट है। वो हो सकता है वो आपका गोत्र हो, वो हो सकता है आपके फादर का नाम हो, कास्ट आपको पता नहीं चलेगी। तो गोत्र इज ऑल्सो क्लैन, क्योंकि यू आर इमेजिनिंग कि देयर वर 7 ऋषिज, जिनमें से एक में से हम निकले। एंड दिस गोत्र कॉन्सेप्ट you would see even amongst people who are not Brahmins. It is not that amongst Brahmins only we have Gotra. Gotra system is there even amongst Rajputs who are not Brahmins. So whosoever is Hindu, he or she follows the Gotra system. I'm not saying he follows, but Gotra system is there even if he does not follow. तो क्या होता है जब शादी की बात आती है, ठीक है, when it comes to the discussion on marriage between two people, what happens is that family, the Hindu specific, I'm talking about Hindu family, what they do is they check gotra as well. Caste, within caste they would prefer person should be that of our caste, okay. So within caste we have endogamy, but we have gotra exogamy, should not be of same rishi. Gotra should be different. Gotra exogamy and caste endogamy. This is what we practice. Similarly, same village का नहीं होना चाहिए. He should not be from our village. Village exogamy, caste endogamy, गोत्र exogamy. तब जाके शादी होती है. ये 3 चीजें चेक की जाती हैं हिंदुओं में. ट्रेडिशनल हिंदू की बात कर रहा हूं मैं, मॉडर्न की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं. ट्रेडिशनल हिंदू सोसाइटी जो होती है उसमें देखा जाता है कास्ट, विलेज, गोत्र. Anyhow, so different families come together, they form one clan. This is what simple society is. What is doubly compound? Different clans come together to form one tribe. Okay. Clan 1, clan 2, clan 3 coming together to form one tribe. This is what doubly compound is. And what is triply compound? Triply compound, multiple tribes coming together to form one nation. That is triply compound. Okay. Tribe 1, tribe 2, tribe 3 forming one nation. हो गया, ठीक है. तो ये हमने क्या देखा? हमने देखा एवोल्यूशन, सोसाइटी का एवोल्यूशनरी थ्योरी ऑफ सोशल चेंज. दिस इज व्हाट वी सॉ. In all these theories, you must have noticed one thing. All these theories tell us more we move forward, more developed we are. ठीक है, more we move forward, more developed we are. That means the idea of progress implies development in the evolutionary system. Okay, if you progress, that means you are developing. If you are progressing, that means you are developing. It is implied. Okay, secondly, this theory also implies that you progress in stage fashion. That means first stage was this, then after that second stage would be this only, and then after that the third stage would be this. You cannot have stage being skipped by societies. You would see societies following the same stages to achieve the same destination. This is what evolutionary theory is all about. Just like it is based on our biology only. All of us become adult only through certain stages. Only after having gone through certain stages. We do not become adult. खाना खाते ही adult बन जाते हैं, ऐसा नहीं होता. Stage होते हैं. Adolescence से पास होते हैं, teenage, वीनेज से पास होते हैं, फिर जाके adult बनते हैं. ठीक है. Now ये तो हो गया खत्म हमारा. Now I'll talk about functionalist theory. Functionalist theory of social change is largely given by, tell me, किसने दिया है? हाँ, पार्सन्स ने दिया है. पार्सन्स. ठीक है. तो पार्सन्स और वो मैंने पढ़ा चुका हूँ ऑलरेडी तुमको. मैं ऑलरेडी पढ़ा चुका हूँ. मैंने तभी उस दिन तुम्हें बोला था फंक्शनल थ्योरी ऑफ सोशल चेंज है, ये आगे भी काम आएगा. पढ़ा चुका हूँ. स्टिल रिवाइज करा दूंगा मैं. पार्सन्स एंड वन मोर स्कॉलर तो हम यूज करेंगे आगे, विलियम हॉकबर्न. ही इज ऑल्सो फंक्शनलिस्ट. स्टूडेंट है, ही स्टूडेंट ऑफ टैलकट पार्सन्स. ये तुम्हें आगे काम भी आएगा. बट आई टॉक अबाउट फर्स्ट, आई टॉक अबाउट पार्सन्स. पार्सन्स इतना ही बोलता है. सी देखो ऐसा होता है, आइडिया बड़ा सिंपल है. इमेजिन अ पर्सन हु इज वॉकिंग ऑन अ टाइट रोप. एक लंबी रस्सी है, ठीक है. हु इज वॉकिंग ऑन अ टाइट रोप with few things in his both of his hands. Okay, and he has to maintain balance and walk like this ऐसे करके. ठीक है, walking on a tight rope. So when he was not supposed to be walking on a tight rope, when he did not have anything on his both of his hands, he was simply standing still. He was in equilibrium stage. Moment someone told him to walk on the tightrope with few things on both of your hand and to maintain balance as well. This was the time when disequilibrium came. Equilibrium got disturbed. Okay. And when finally, when he would make it to the last point, finally वो पहुंच गया, फिर खत्म हो गया. चलो पकड़ो इसको, जीत गया, 1 करोड़ रुपए हो गए, खत्म. Again, equilibrium maintained. So before starting the game, equilibrium. During the game, equilibrium disturbed. Winning the game, equilibrium maintained once again. And this same thing happens with societies. But to say that before starting that game, you were in equilibrium would also be wrong, according to Talcott Parson. You are always in a state of constant flux. क्योंकि जब आप खड़े थे ना, 10 चीजें आप सोच रहे थे. ये कर पाऊंगा कि नहीं कर पाऊंगा, लोग क्या सोचेंगे इसके बारे में, यार मैं ये सब कर रहा हूँ. हाँ, और 10 पीछे से 2 लोग आपको बोल रहे कुछ, आप सुन ही नहीं पा रहे क्योंकि आपका ध्यान कहीं और है. ठीक है. हाँ, मैं अभी करता हूँ, रुको। सारा टाइम कांस्टेंट फ्लक्स चल रहा होता है। इक्विलिब्रियम कभी नहीं होता। इक्विलिब्रियम क्या है? आइडियल टाइप है, एक मॉडल है, मॉडल। इट डज नॉट एग्जिस्ट इन रियलिटी। तभी टेलकेट पार्सन ने बोला मूविंग मूविंग इक्विलिब्रियम होता है। तो टेलकेट पार्सन से दैट every society which is in so called equilibrium, the model, okay, that society goes through technological changes, familial changes, legal changes, normative changes, and you know how it happens. There are different reasons for social change. I told you about 4 or 5 factors also, some factors which cause social change in the system. Population, I told you. If there is underpopulation or if there is overpopulation, both of them are going to create upheaval in the system. डेमोग्राफी जिसको बोलते हैं। ओवर पॉपुलेशन हो गया तो भी सिस्टम वो जो बैलेंस है बिगड़ जाएगा। ठीक है, फिर उसको मेंटेन कैसे करें? पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल मेजर्स। State will come up with policies regulating population. Equilibrium will be tried to maintain. It will tend to, that is why Telker Parson says, whenever you have any sort of change coming in the system, okay, changes के source आपको मालूम है, source of change डेमोग्राफी हो सकता है, टेक्नोलॉजी हो सकता है, आइडियाज हो सकता है. Let us talk about these three only. When population crosses certain limit, equilibrium हिलने लगता है, टूटने लगता है, सोसाइटी शेक करने लगती है, जैसे वो शेक कर रहा था आदमी. फिर क्या होएगा? सोसाइटी विल ट्राई टू अडेप्ट टू द इंक्रीज्ड डेमोग्राफी. यही तो होता है ना, हम भी अडेप्ट ही तो कर रहे होते हैं. वो if I'm walking on that tightrope, I'm trying to adapt myself to this. I'm trying to maintain balance. Society also does it. Society would try to come up with policy measures. For example, one of the measure to curb population would be to educate women. वुमेन की एजुकेशन बढ़ाओगे वो अपने आप में कॉन्ट्रासेप्टिव मेजर है. The education of women, according to some sociologists, I don't want to talk about their names, the education of women is a natural contraceptive measure. Because when women are educated, they would not be indulged in what do you say, untimely sex or premarital sex or sex under pressure or compulsion of the man. And population अपने आप balance maintain करेगी. Second measure could be to instill fear in the minds of the masses. अगर 2 से ज्यादा हुए ना, दिखोगे नहीं तुम यहां पर. ऐसा अगर स्टेट करने लग जाए हमारे साथ, ठीक है, 1 से ज्यादा हुए तो तुम्हें सोशल स्कीम्स का कोई बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. ये ऊपर से आता है, एक तो होता है नीचे से. एजुकेट करो बिना ये बोले. सी इफ यू एजुकेट वुमेन बाय टेलिंग हर इफ यू गेट एजुकेटेड ना, देन यू विल नॉट बी रिप्रोड्यूसिंग चिल्ड्रन। ऐसा तो आप नहीं बोलते हो, ऐसा नहीं बोलोगे आप कभी, बट उसके फायदे अपने आप हो जाएंगे, उसको वो नहीं करेगी। लेकिन ये जो है ना ऊपर से जो आ रहा है, ये आप बोल के कर रहे हो, ये करोगे ना, अगर ये तुमने ऐसे किया तुमको नहीं मिलेगा क्योंकि तुम ऐसे कर रहे हो, तो ये इसका जो इम्पैक्ट है ये उतना सॉलिड नहीं पड़ेगा। इंडिया डिड दिस वन ऑल्सो ड्यूरिंग इमरजेंसी। चाइना हैज ऑल्सो डन दिस। ओके, India is still doing it. Not every state, but few states are trying to do it, planning to do it. The top one. And whenever state would try to come up with policies regulating the population from top, you would have civil society in the bottom trying to challenge the state. So that state could formulate policies like this, the soft policy which I talked about, soft measure. Okay. And that is how equilibrium would be restored. Therefore, what I simply meant was, when you have change in demography, any sort of change, infant mortality rate, fertility rate, वो सब जितना भी total fertility rate, sex ratio बढ़ रहा है या फिर डिसबैलेंस हो रहा है in favor of one particular sex, जो भी कुछ भी हो डेमोग्राफी में, you will automatically see system maintaining itself due to what Talcott Parson call as structural adjustments. Adaptive capacity. If you remember, I told you adaptive capacity. Okay. If state is resorting to coercive measures from top, it shows the system do not have very strong adaptive capacity, because it has to resort to violence. This is also violence, symbolic violence. Michel Foucault, I told you, Michel Foucault calls it biopower. वो मैं तुम्हें पढ़ाऊंगा नहीं कभी, क्योंकि वो बहुत आगे की बात होती है, वो सब एमफिल पीएचडी के लिए होता है, तुम्हारे लिए नहीं है। बट दैट इज बायोपावर, पावर रेगुलेटेड, पावर एक्सरसाइज ऑन दी बॉडीज ऑफ सिटीजन्स, बॉडी पे कंट्रोल जब स्टेट करता है, दैट इज बायोपावर। ओके, so anyhow, similarly, when you have any kind of technological innovations which have disturbed the system, you will see system adjusting itself to the changes introduced by technology, adapting itself. For example, see, just like Marx would tell us society progress due to changes in the means of production. That means changes in technology. Changes in technology led to change in means of production. Okay. Few people have control over technology, few others do not have. This creates conflict. But Talcott Parson would never talk about conflict. Talcott Parson would always say, whenever there is any technological change, for example, in India, if I were to talk about change like demonetization, which actually was change on the lines of technology, that you should have cashless transaction. ये तो था. Demonetization was done to promote cashless transactions. Technological change. Now what happened? Yes, chaos was there for a very long time after demonetization, but eventually society maintained itself. Many people got their account linked with जनधन, वो सब आधार योजना, जैम, ट्रिनिटी सब एक्टिव हुआ, और जो पेमेंट सिस्टम है स्ट्रीमलाइन हुआ, आधार इनेबल्ड पेमेंट सिस्टम, स्मार्टफोन सबको, कई लोगों को मिले, एजुकेशन मिली, डिजिटल डिवाइड भी कम होने की बात करी, फैमिलीज आल्सो अडेप्टेड, different sort of family. So like for example, when this lockdown happened, families adapted to the lockdown by डिफरेंट एप्स के थ्रू हमने जूम पे बात करी, ठीक है। कुछ एक ऐप बड़ी चल रही थी जिसमें फैमिलीज आपस में सब बातें करते हैं, वो ऐप का नाम भूल गया हूँ मैं, पता नहीं, बीच में एक ऐप आई थी, जूम नहीं है, कोई और ऐप है जिसमें फैमिली फैमिली आपस में लगे पड़े थे। जब घर का काम बढ़ गया वुमेन के ऊपर, when the burden got increased, since every person is now at home, not going out for work, this actually increased burden on women who was doing domestic services. How adaptation happened? Husbands also helped women. Adaptation हो रहा है, okay. So you would see whenever any change happens, society adjusts itself to the changes, and then equilibrium is again maintained due to structural adjustments. And that is why Talcott Parson always talks about moving equilibrium. He would never talk about revolution. He would say moving equilibrium. New ideas develop, again changes happen. New ideas. When Lord Buddha challenged Brahmanism, disturbed equilibrium of society. Okay, it disturbed equilibrium of society. Similarly, when Martin Luther challenged Catholicism, disturbed equilibrium of society. But then again, society maintained equilibrium with the development of sect called Protestant and then Catholic. अब इनमें शांति है. Now we have Buddhism and Hinduism mutually coexisting together without any conflict. Do you see any conflict between Hindu and Buddhist today? No. उस टाइम था कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, अब खत्म हो गया, रिजॉल्व हो गया, इक्विलिब्रियम है. Okay. So this is what the idea of Talcott Parson is. Functional theory of social change. Okay. Next is the theory given by William Ogburn. Again, functional theory, but very important one. William Ogburn has actually refined Talcott Parsons' theory of social change. William Ogburn says कि देखो होता क्या है ना एक्चुअली में, होता क्या है एक्चुअली में कि जब चेंज की, when we talk about change happens at two level. Okay, one is material, second at the level of values, which is non-material. ये तो मानते ही होगे तुम भाई. There are two sort of change. One is material change, second is change related to ideas. सारा हमने यही देखा अभी तक, कोई मैटर की बात करता है, कोई आइडिया की बात करता है. चेंज दोनों में ही होते हैं, मैटर में भी होता है, आइडिया में भी होता है. बट Ogburn says the change at the level of matter, that means technology, happens rapidly. Rapid change. आप देखोगे टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस ना बहुत रैपिडली होते हैं, बहुत रैपिड. आईफोन 12 आया, आईफोन 13 आ जाएगा अभी अगले महीने, फिर आईफोन 13 प्रो आ जाएगा उसके अगले महीने. फटाफट होते हैं, फटाफट. 1 + 6 7 8 9 10. कैमरा की टेक्नोलॉजी में आप देखोगे चेंजेस फटाफट आए. मोबाइल फोन के कैमरास के चेंजेस आप देखोगे फटाफट आए. So changes at the level of technology happens rapidly, but changes at the level of values do not happen so rapidly. Values इतनी जल्दी नहीं बदलती जितनी जल्दी आईफोन बदलते हैं. हाँ, वैल्यूज का जो एवोल्यूशन होता है वो स्लो होता है, स्लो होता है इन कंपैरिजन टू दिस, स्लोअर. They change slowly. Ethics, norms, values, they take time. Now, let me ask you one very simple question. Our Indian government has introduced so many technological changes. So many technological changes have been introduced by our Indian government. For example, gold deposit scheme, जो कि बहुत पहले चलता था, लेकिन अब गोल्ड डिपॉजिट की जगह क्या आता है? ई गोल्ड. ठीक है, दिस इज टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंज. ई गोल्ड, गोल्ड पेपर, these are technological change that you transact gold without physical gold. but होता क्या है, हमारी वैल्यूज देखो, हमें तो गोल्ड ही चाहिए. फिजिकल जो जब तक हमारे हाथ में नहीं होएगा वो ब्रिक, तब तक मजा नहीं आता. ठीक है, यही प्रॉब्लम, यही फेलियर भी है. यही रीजन है फेल क्यों कर गया हमारा गोल्ड मोनेटाइजेशन स्कीम, या कोई भी ऐसी फैसिलिटी जब आती है टेक्नोलॉजिकल लेवल पर. गोल्ड का एक्सचेंज जब होता है ट्रेड मार्केट में, स्टॉक मार्केट में, वो भी इतना फैसिलिटेट क्यों नहीं हो पाता? क्योंकि पीपल डू नॉट हैव दिस हैबिट ऑफ हैविंग पेपर गोल्ड, यानी ट्रांजैक्शन स्टॉक स्लिप्स के फॉर्म में. ऐसी आदत नहीं है. लोग को गोल्ड चाहिए ही चाहिए, वो सोना दिखना चाहिए उनके, उनको बोलना है 10 किलो है हमारे घर पे, उनको बोल, वो उनकी वैल्यूज वही है. जब शादी होगी तो तोड़ना है हमको, गोल्ड तोड़ना है. ठीक है, बेटी की शादी के लिए तोड़, वो उसको तोड़ नहीं पाएंगे, वो तो पता नहीं है भी नहीं, किसी को बोल भी नहीं पाएंगे. ठीक है, वैल्यूज में चेंज नहीं आया है. दिवाली में अभी भी जाएंगे शॉप पे, सोने की चमक दिखाई देनी चाहिए, हाँ वैसा ही कुछ, तो दुकान पे जाएंगे हम. वैल्यूज में चेंज नहीं आया, टेक्नोलॉजी में भली चेंज आ गई. उसी तरह, ठीक उसी तरह, you would see many technological changes, like for example, in India, when we introduce technological changes, whenever we introduce technological changes, we always had people resisting those technological changes. And who are those people who are resisting technological innovations? What do we call those people? नहीं, ऑर्थोडॉक्स तो है, एक टर्म मैंने बताया था तुम लोगों को, लूडाइट्स. यस, लूडाइट्स. तो विलियम ऑकबर्न इज लार्जली टॉकिंग अबाउट लूडाइट्स. William Ogden says that when material changes happen rapidly in comparison to non-material changes which take time to adapt, it leads to cultural lag. This is known as cultural lag. Our values have not become modern. The technology that we are using is highly modern. Our values, our mindset is not modern. जब इलेक्ट्रिसिटी आई थी तो लालटेन से प्रोटेस्ट किया था लालू प्रसाद यादव ने, लालटेन पकड़ के. Just one of the example. When in India we had this technology amniocentesis, it was used to determine sex. लड़की होने वाली है लड़का, क्योंकि वैल्यूज हमारी पेट्रियार्कल है. टेक्नोलॉजी आ गई और उसका काम क्या था देखो. what was the utility of amniocentesis test? To check any sort of defect in fetus. फीटस में कोई डिफेक्ट है उसको चेक करने के लिए वो आई थी टेक्नोलॉजी, और उसका यूज हमने क्या किया? लड़का होने वाला है लड़की, इसके लिए वैल्यूज हमारी वही है। टेक्नोलॉजी तो चेंज हो गई, वैल्यूज में चेंज नहीं आ रहा। ठीक है, इसको कल्चरल लैग बोलते हैं। ओके, think of think of any sort of technological innovation that has happened and people resisting it in the name of ethics. That is also cultural lag. Three parent baby. Technological innovation, but people resist in the name of ethics and values and norms of family and all those things. And even religion. Cultural lag. Okay. ये आपको याद रखना है. Important theory है ये. Now the question is, ये टेलकट पार्सन से रिलेटेड कैसे है? भाई टेलकट पार्सन हमें क्या बोलता था? Any change happens, society disrupts equilibrium, then society would want to maintain equilibrium once again. But okay, yes, that is fact that when any change comes, society disrupts. Disruption means what? Ogburn says disruption basically happens first at technological level, which takes place rapidly, and values at the level of values gradually. So disruption at level of technology is rapid, at level of values is gradual, but disruption is disruption. And since this would take time to adapt to the rapid change in technology, this is the cause for strain in the system. This is the cause for strain. Strain आता है सिस्टम में, और जब तक ये strain resolve नहीं होता तब तक सोसाइटी फ्लक्स में है, कांस्टेंट फ्लक्स में है, इक्विलिब्रियम मेंटेन नहीं होएगा. ओके, so called equilibrium. Understood? This was all about William Ogburn. Now, conflict theory. Of social change. First, Marx. Remember, according to Talcott Parsons, social change happens in gradual fashion. Okay, moving equilibrium. Okay, no place for conflict. Talcott Parsons would never say conflict is the cause of social change. Talcott Parsons would always say any sort of external intervention may disturb the system, but then system would restore by structural adjustments and would maintain the equilibrium. So therefore, to Talcott Parsons, social change is the result of continuous adjustment process, nothing else. Okay. Talcott Parsons के लिए social change is the consequence of continuous structural adjustments which we also call as structural differentiation. वो भी होता है, वो अपने फंक्शंस लूज करके कोई और ऑर्गन शुरू कर देता है वो फंक्शन, ये स्पेशलिस्ट हो जाता है एक में. ये अडेप्टेशन ही तो चल रहा है. ठीक है, continuous structural adjustment. Marx would never say this. Marx would say it is the fact is that in society consists of scarce resources, limited resources हैं. देखो सोसाइटी लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज हैं, और लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज हैं और कुछ ग्रुप्स हैं जिनको वो रिसोर्स चाहिए. एक ने वो रिसोर्स हड़प रखे हैं, दूसरे को वो रिसोर्स चाहिए, और इनके बीच में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हमेशा रहेगा. और जब तक इनके बीच में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होएगा तब तक चेंज नहीं आएगा. भाई सोसाइटी कंसिस्ट ऑफ लिमिटेड सोर्सेस, resources. Society consists of limited resources, LTD resources. And it also consists of opposing groups claiming those resources. And this opposition between the groups would result in conflict, and this conflict would bring in social change. Therefore, history of society is nothing but society of class struggle. तो वो क्लियरली बोल रहा है हिस्ट्री का एवोल्यूशन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की वजह से ही हुआ. Societies have evolved only due to conflict between the two groups, between the two classes, social classes. Understood? ठीक है, चलो आज के लिए इतना ही करते हैं. Saturation हो गया होगा. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. कल से क्लास 6 बजे तक है, 3 दिन के लिए, only for 3 days. We will have class till 6 p.m. Hierarchy versus stratification. देखो, हायरार्की A, B, C, D. अब देखो स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन. Stratification includes this. Hierarchy is part of stratification, but it also includes differences which cannot be hierarchized but get hierarchized due to popular consciousness. ये हायरार्की किस बेसिस पे है? क्वांटिटेटिव. और ये डिफरेंसेस विल अज्यूम हायरार्की क्वालिटेटिव डिफरेंसेस की वजह से. समझे? Stratification includes both differences and hierarchy. Okay, differences assume hierarchy. That is different thing. But the differences which are assuming hierarchy are not based on quantitative measure. They are qualitatively different, assuming hierarchy because of popular consciousness. So hierarchy is only one aspect of the larger stratas in society. Our society is divided into different layers. बहुत layers हैं, बहुत ज्यादा layers हैं हमारी सोसाइटी में. कुछ layers हैं जिनको आप असाइन कर दोगे एक रैंक 1 2 3 4 5 6 क्वांटिटेटिव मेजर, बट कुछ layers को आप कभी भी रैंक असाइन कर नहीं पाओगे, बट वो रैंक अज्यूम कर लेते हैं. ओके, तो एग्जांपल ही तो दे रहा हूं मैं, और क्या कर रहा हूं. हायरार्की का एग्जांपल ही तो दिया है मैंने, क्लास बेस्ड. क्लास बेस्ड हायरार्की ओपन नहीं है क्या? ओपन है. इंडिविजुअल लोअर क्लास में पैदा हुआ, मिडिल क्लास बन सकता है कि नहीं बन सकता है? बन सकता है. ओपन है. Hierarchy that is class based. But then there are differences which cannot be hierarchized. For example, man woman. इनको आप हायरार्की में डाल लोगे? मैन ऊपर वुमेन नीचे? नहीं डाल पाओगे. These are only different. Similarly, Hindu Muslim, they are only different. Hindi English, only different languages. Brahmin Kshatriya, only different groups. But in popular consciousness, they assume hierarchy. They are only different. No quantitative criteria or objective or meritocratic criteria to have hierarchy between them. A hierarchy would be there, but that would be based purely on some differences being perceived as superior and some differences being perceived as inferior. Okay, differences and hierarchy both are part of stratification. Our stratas in society, हमारी सोसाइटी में जितनी भी लेयर्स है ना, लेयर्स का मतलब क्या होता है तुम्हें मालूम है? लेयर्स को सिर्फ हम वर्टिकली देखते हैं, लेयर्स हॉरिजॉन्टल लेवल पर भी होती हैं. ओके, देयर आर सम पीपल जिनको आप कभी वर्टिकल उस पर नहीं डाल पाओगे. प्रोफेसर, आईएएस ऑफिसर, यू कैन नॉट से वन इज सुपीरियर एंड सेकंड इज इंफीरियर. बोथ आर इक्वल. सेम ग्रेड पे है, सेम स्टेटस है, सेम पावर है. ऑलमोस्ट पावर आप मान लोगे आईएएस की ज्यादा है उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में, लेकिन उस आईएएस की पावर यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर थोड़ा होगी. उस यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रोफेसर की होगी. सिमिलरली उस प्रोफेसर की उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में नहीं चलेगी जितनी. तो वो अलग है, सिर्फ अलग. ठीक है, तो ये बात. तो जब हमको याद क्या रखना है कि सर्टिफिकेशन सिर्फ वर्टिकल नहीं होता है, सर्टिफिकेशन हॉरिजॉन्टल भी होता है. हमको इतना याद रखना है. स्ट्रेटास आर नॉट ओनली वर्टिकल, स्ट्रेटास आर आल्सो हॉरिजॉन्टल. एंड दीज हॉरिजॉन्टल स्ट्रेटास assume vertical character without any objective reasoning or merit. Okay, so the study of social stratification includes the study of differences, the study of inequality, and the study of everything that is open or closed. That is what Dipak Gupta would say. Clear?